Hello, good morning everyone, Rich Wong here. Welcome back to the channel. I'm always a big fan of pancake lenses because I just love how compact the pancake lenses are. I've bought a few pancake lenses just because they are pancake lenses. And I remember that was one of the main reasons why I bought my first mirrorless camera, the Panasonic Lumix GF1, when it was released, because I just love the GF1 with the 20mm pancake lens. So of course today we are going to have a look at a new pancake lens, and it is the 23mm f5.6 full frame pancake lens from Brightin Star. My regular viewers may remember I have reviewed two lenses from Brightin Star not too long ago. Those two lenses may not deliver the best optical performance, but they are really good value for money. The price of this new pancake lens from Brightin Star is just under $100 US, so the price is surely very attractive as well. And with the 23mm focal length, this could be a great lens for street photography or even just as a general everyday lens. But is the optical performance good enough, and is it a fun lens to use? Well, let me share with you my thoughts in this review. And just a usual disclaimer before we start, Brightin Star sent me a lens sample for this review, but as usual this is a completely independent review with no input or influence by Brightin Star. This Brightin Star 23mm f5.6 lens is a full frame lens. It's available for Nikon Z, Canon RF, Sony E, and also Leica L mount. The sample I received is for the Leica L mount, but optically they are all the same. If you use it on an APS-C lens, then you get the approximately 35mm equivalent focal length, so it is a pretty versatile focal length for both full frame and APS-C cameras. As we call it a pancake lens, so not surprisingly, it is a very compact lens. Look at it when it's mounted on the Panasonic S5. The front of the lens is pretty much lined up with the grip, so it is a very small lens, and it is also a very lightweight lens as well. It weighs just under 130 grams, but at the same time the lens feels very solid because of its metal construction, and unlike most other cheap pancake lenses in the market, it doesn't really feel or look like a toy lens at all. It feels very nice, very solid. And I love that chrome ring at the front of the lens. It matches the chrome finish on the S5 lens mount perfectly. It is a f5.6 lens, and what I mean is the aperture is fixed at f5.6, so you can't change the aperture at all, so the lens has no aperture ring, and because of that the body of the lens is pretty much just one big focus ring. Well, it's not that big because the size is not really that big. So anyway, the whole body is just the focus ring, and unlike a lot of cheap pancake lenses that only give you two focus settings, which is far and close, with this Brightin Star lens you can set the focus to pretty much any focus distance you want. The focus ring is quite smooth, but it does require a bit of force to turn it. Maybe that's a good thing, because once you set the focus distance you want, like maybe when you are doing street photography, then it will stay like that and you won't easily change the focus distance accidentally. So overall there really isn't much that I can complain about the build quality of this lens. Maybe I can mention that the numbers on the lens are just printed on it, they are not engraved. But for a lens that is less than $100, that is pretty much expected. The minimum focus distance of this lens is 0.24 meter, and I do not know the exact maximum magnification ratio, but it looks average. So you won't be using this as a macro lens for sure, but if you just want to take some normal close-up photos, then it is still okay. In terms of sharpness, center sharpness is good, very good actually, but corner sharpness is really average. And when I look at my sharpness test photo, I notice a strange thing is the corner seems to have a bluish color tint, which make the corner looks a bit cooler than the center of the photo. As a wide angle lens with f5.6 aperture, you can't really dissolve the background too much unless you are shooting at or very close to the minimum focus distance. Then yeah, you can dissolve the background a little bit, but in general, this isn't a lens to create bokeh balls in the background. Vignetting is quite noticeable with this Brightin Star lens, especially you consider this is a f5.6 lens, and you can't really stop down the lens to minimize vignetting because it has a fixed f5.6 aperture. But we do have to remember this is a pancake lens which usually do have more vignetting than the average lens. And if you are using this lens for street photography, then having a bit of vignetting is usually not a bad thing anyway. As I've mentioned before, the corner of the photo does have a bluish color tint, and this is quite noticeable in this test photo. As you can see, the center of the photo is slightly warm in terms of color temperature, but the corner has a little bit of blue tint. Lens flare control is really average with this lens. Depends if you like lens flare or not, it could be the biggest weakness of this lens. I see lens flare in a lot of my photos, no matter I took them during the day or during the night. When there's a strong light source in front of the camera, then there usually would be a bit of lens flare. And because it is quite a wide angle lens with no lens hood included, it is also quite hard to avoid lens flare. Chromatic aberration performance of this pancake lens is pretty good. For a budget pancake lens, I was expecting to see quite a bit of color fringing in a lot of my photos, but when I checked the photos, even at 200% zoom, there really isn't much color fringing at all. So I'm quite surprised and impressed. If we look at this brick wall test photo, you can see this lens has quite a bit of barrel distortion. Actually, even when I was just doing street photography, I already noticed the amount of distortion. If you don't like the distortion, you could apply a +7 distortion correction in Lightroom, and that will get rid of most of the distortion. Usually in my reviews, after the picture quality analysis, I would just jump directly into the conclusion and share with you my final thoughts. But with this lens, I want to talk about something a little bit more first. When people buy a $99 pancake lens, image quality is usually not the most important thing. As long as the image quality is okay, then it is okay. Well, at least that's what I thought when I'm buying a budget pancake lens. And for this Brightin Star lens, I think the image quality is good enough for a $99 lens. There are a few flaws in terms of image quality. For example, the corner performance is not really that good, and there's quite a bit of distortion, and lens flare happens very easily as well. So it's probably not great for doing landscape photography. But if you want to use this lens for street photography, I think these flaws add a bit of character to the photo. And this leads me to the topic that I want to talk about, and that's street photography. I think street photography is really what this Brightin Star lens is designed for. With the f5.6 aperture and the wide angle, you can just rely on zone focusing when doing street photography. For me, I usually set the focus to around 2 meters, and that works really well for the type of photo that I take. I don't really have to adjust the focus distance much at all. To be honest, 23mm is a bit wider than what I usually like to use for street photography. I usually prefer around 28mm, maybe up to 35mm or so. But the good thing with a 23mm lens is because it's quite wide angle, so I don't really have to aim my camera very carefully. Just point it roughly to the direction I want and click the shutter button, it's really just point and shoot. No need to worry about autofocus or precise framing. Instead, I can focus more on other things like timing or lighting. But because it's quite a wide angle lens, it means I have to get quite close to my subject, which may feel a bit harder for some people. But because the lens is so small, it usually doesn't draw too much attention, especially if you set the camera to use the electronic shutter. And when I look at the photos, because of the wide view angle, it would make me feel like I'm just standing there on the street. So the photo just bring me back to the scene that I took the photo. So anyway, if you want to do some street photography, maybe you have never done any street photography before and want to give it a try, this $99 Brightin Star 23mm f5.6 lens is a really fun and affordable choice for doing street photography.